Is your kid really ready to drive? Can you trust them?
Oh, gosh, don't even.
Is your kid ready to have a cell phone? Can you trust them?
Oh, man, I mean...
Is your kid ready to ride down the street on their own? Do you trust them?
Or do you have a pile of cameras and GPS systems attached to them so you know their every move?
We're going to talk about some other ways that may be a little less expensive than tracking your child's every move and talk about fostering some trust and independence in your home.
Mama says namaste. Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh, yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.
So trust, man, that's like the magic bullet that seems to just be so elusive sometimes.
Right, and we hear about it a lot. It's scary. You know, I feel that there's a sense of the helicopter parenting. When I see a helicopter parent, I understand that desire to want to be there and protect our children from anything. But what I see is a parent that has zero trust in their child's own capability.
Or are not willing to let them experience cause and effect.
Right.
There's a great video that I did with Ellie when we were at the zoo one time. And I wanted her to hold my hand when she was, I don't know, like 2 maybe.
Uh-huh.
And she wouldn't hold my hand. She wanted to be independent. And not only that, she wanted to crawl through this fence. And she got stuck. And I let her get stuck. And I stood there and I let her experience that her route was going to take her down a path that she may not like. And then she finally got to this point where she said, I tuck. And I said, yeah, you are stuck, Ellie. If you had held my hand, do you think you'd still be stuck? No. Would you like me to help you get out of that sticky situation? Yep. And so we did. And that began, those are those first steps of kind of building, to me, that trust. Stepping outside that helicopter parent and allowing your child to walk that fine line between falling off the edge and keeping their balance.
Right, because when we talk about trust, well, the reason why we want to foster trust or have trust in our children is because we want to ultimately trust them to be able to be independent and to stand on their own 2 feet. And we've talked before on here that we don't feel like there is a switch that you flip from kid to adulthood. I mean, they're navigating being human and the further development of their maturity throughout their life. And that starts from the time they're born until the time they die. That whole lifespan is a time of growth and maturity. And I mean, I know plenty of adults who are still in a lot of ways in the immature kid zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some children who are very much the old souls. It's not about the age thing. It's about figuring out the tools to deepen your maturity level in a way that helps you to work in your best light, to continue to move forward in your own growth and development.
Right. I mean, you're being able to allow your child to fly with their own wings, with their own confidence, alongside you to support something that you're trying to do together. Man, that gives them some real power and really buy-in to the family.
Yeah.
That. I mean, I think about just as we have built trust. There's really not a whole lot that, at least at this point, I know things will come up, but I don't really worry about the trusting my kids at this point. Now, that can change and that can shift as their minds shift and change. So you always have to be vigilant. But I think as parents, we can sometimes feel like as they're turning into that 10 to 13 stage and they're trying to find some autonomy, and they're trying to pull away. Sometimes the reaction is just to completely pull away and let them drive the, when they need the help and when they want the love.
Or micromanage and go to the other extreme.
Yeah. And instead of this balance, this collaboration together on, well, what does life look like and what do you want it to look like? Trust is really us handing the reins over in life and allowing them to, run it themselves.
Right. And you made a point there that I wanted to touch on too. You said it's about, trusting our kids to make the right choices and things like that. There are times that, I will be completely honest, as a parent, I can trust my child to have the desire to do the right thing and not trust their maturity and impulse control.
Well, that's very true.
On their capability. That's why we don't just have a free-for-all for internet. Yeah, I can trust my kids. We have open conversations with our kids. And that being said, giving a child full access to anything and everything online behind a closed door can kind of sometimes be something where, their maturity level, their impulses, their knowledge on how to navigate the internet may not fully be there yet.
I don't know that as a society we have fully
figured
that out yet. And
we as adults can get really led astray and go down bunny trails and get really lost and confused by what things we find on the internet.
Right. And so it can just be just as complicated for your child. Plus, they want that trust. They want you to know that they can be left alone, or they can go run an errand, or they can do a project unfacilitated by anybody else, and they can have the honor and privilege of bringing that. Look what I've helped.
It's empowerment.
It's
is that feeling of pride on what they can do.
And that, I think empowerment and trust go hand in hand together, because you have to empower your child to fall and make mistakes, to try to figure it out on their own. And I think as a parent, some parents want to protect their children constantly and keep them safe. And we are taught that is a righteous parenting tactic. I'm just trying to keep them safe. Well, physically, yeah. Emotionally, do they feel safe? Emotionally, do they feel heard?
Well, I've seen this in, families where you've got, for example, there's the toddler who is learning to walk and navigate their steps and everything else. And every time they go close to anything that might possibly trip them up, you have a parent running after them. Well, and what happens is I see that toddler continue to run blind, knowing that they've got so much trust in their parent that they don't use discernment. They don't look where they're going. They're not paying attention. Why should they? It doesn't matter. Their parents are going to swoop in and protect
Somebody
them.
always catches me before I get hurt.
Right. And so we can do our children a major disservice where they don't try to build that independence on their own.
And as parents, we are watching our children and trying to make a judgment call on whether their capabilities match their physical or mental state.
Right.
And we're judging them a lot of times on whether they can or can't, and sometimes jumping in and trying to swoop that up.
Right. I have to be careful about that, even with understanding. There's science behind how our brain develops. And so there are legitimate stepping stones of growth and insight that we get growing up and our ability to handle impulse control and things like that. And I can have a child who can seem very mature in some ways, but the reality is, she's still 11 and she still is not going to have the same wires firing as my 16-year-old, for example. And so we have to kind of give grace for where they're at in the moment as far as how much leash we can give. So
how do we help people with all this madness?
Right. So we have three kind of key areas here, and we want to kind of address it for all ages, because we know some of you may have, young toddlers in the home, small kids, and others are going to have tweens or teens. And so we'll address a little bit about each.
Yeah.
So number one is creating a safe space for open communication. Our children, we want to foster in our home a place where there is a safe space to be able to discuss anything and everything, something that they could be worried about or even ashamed of, or questioning different, thoughts and opinions in the household. I'm very grateful that was something that I got growing up. While we were very conservative in our beliefs and thoughts at home, that conservativity did not it was not a closed door for conversation. I always felt that even though we had very specific beliefs and values growing up, my parents were also very open to us asking any question. And boy, we did. I mean, I hit my dad with a sex question at 5 years old. So, I mean, we brought everything out in the open. And I felt that my home was a safe place for having those discussions. And we wanted to foster that with our own children and create a safe space for any kind of conversation. And so they would listen to us have conversations and question and change our thinking on things as a way of helping them see that this is a safe place for dialogue, for us to learn and grow together. And
that's a great point, is showing an example of safe and honest dialogue as parents in front of that child, or encouraging them in that debate. You know, again, that empowers them to have some control in their life, and it gives them a framework to use as they move forward.
Right. So you want to try listening without judgment. So when your child is coming to you with anything, first and foremost, listen with an open mind. Be open to hearing where they are, not with your agenda, not with reading into the story or anything else. I'm really big on not writing the story for someone else. Don't be a mind reader. Don't try to be a steward of their story. Don't try to reframe it with how you think it should be, but meet them where they are and let them be the one to share their story. And then be honest with your kids in the process. Our kids are more likely to trust us if we're honest with them, even if it's difficult. And that means that it doesn't mean that we have to divulge, every single thing. I'm not going to go to my child and tell them about issues I'm having in the bedroom with my husband. I mean, that's not for them to hear. That being said, I can be open and honest about, Daddy and I are trying to figure things out a little bit, and it's not something that's a concern for you, but I know you notice that there's some negative tension. Know that your daddy and I still love each other very much, and we're working through this, and and it's not for you to carry.
Right.
Having
Adults
an honest conversation,
have debates
like that.
And try to work things out.
Right. So look at having these honest conversations. Be honest with your kid when you just say, I don't know. I don't really know the answer to what it is you're saying, or boy, that really kind of scares me. That freaks me out with what you said. And I need to kind of gather my thoughts a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I need to gather my thoughts for how to process it. I mean, being open and honest and being vulnerable with your kids is so valuable. And I've done this with young kids. I mean, when we had very small children at home and we were going through some hard times, we lost a family member, we had, frustrations with extended family, anything that we had going on, and our kids come up and they're pulling at us or something. I mean, there are times where I would use the example of giving from a full bucket. Like, have you filled somebody's bucket with kindness and everything? Well, I'd say, my bucket's pretty empty right now. I'm feeling pretty drained. And mommy's a little cranky right now, and I need just take a break. And I'd be honest with them. And so even at a very young age, we could be honest about where we are with our feelings around what questions they're saying. Why is the sky blue? You know what? I don't really know either. Let's find out together.
Let's look it up.
Yeah.
And those are the things that pull a child into the responsibility of adulthood rather than kind of demanding that they step into it. I mean, you're involving them at a level that they can handle, and you're giving them the respect of communicating that something's going on. I mean, if you think your kids don't notice your tension, you ought to test, what is it, the stress levels in their blood?
No, it's in their urine.
It's in
the
their
John
urine?
Gottman Institute, who studies divorce and marriage, I mean, they did a study, and the only sample that they took was children's urine samples in homes, and they could tell whether the parents were on the path of divorce or fighting at home based on the stress cortisol levels in their urine, in the children's urine.
Right.
I mean, the energy is there. Our kids are very perceptive. They can read a lot, even if it seems like they're whirling dervishes going all over the place. It's amazing what things they do notice. And sometimes it's not what you want them to notice.
Yeah.
So another thing on creating a safe space for open communication is respecting your child's privacy. They have a right to privacy just like we do. While there is an immaturity in there, and what is important to them, maybe, hoarding their special Legos in a spot when they're 4, respect that. And knock before you enter their room. Show them respect. Do the, ask permission before you are just charging into their life. And this was something that, I didn't do the clean out the toys behind my kids' backs. I didn't do that because I didn't want my children to feel like, I don't know if I'm going to lose this at any point. I don't know if I'll get it back. And so I was always very open, and I would very openly say, hey, I'd like to get rid of this toy. Oh, I love this toy. When was the last time you played with it? I don't know. Okay. Do you know where I found it? No, outside in the yard. It's been there for 3 weeks. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't. And then all of a sudden they are owning it and they say, yeah, you are right. I haven't been responsible with this toy. I haven't taken care of it. I'm going to let it go. So I would have we would have conversations with our children anytime that we were going through their things, getting rid of things of theirs, or wanting to search stuff. I mean, I have a child now I have 2 children with phones, and I don't go and sneak behind my children's backs and check everything that they're doing, but I have open conversations with them on checking in on, what are you looking into? What are you focused on right now? Is there anything you want to talk with me about? And sitting down together, what all have you discussed lately? Do you mind if I look through any of these things? And if I get kickback, well, what's your hesitation?
What are you worried about?
Right. And it's funny because I have one child who is so wide open, I have to cover, anything she writes, she wants me to see. And then I have another child who very much wants her privacy with her pen pal letters. And that's A-okay. She can have some privacy with the pen pal letters. She asks me for help when she needs it, and that's okay to have some of that. What we did and what we focus on is fostering the positive surroundings around our children so that we can trust them to spread their wings a little bit. If we're not providing any safe environments where they can spread their wings, I understand micromanaging because, oh my gosh, I'm not going to throw my children to the wolves and not want to be in there micromanaging. That's definitely my tendency. So I want to look at creating the safe spaces where we can all let our guard down and have a safe place to share, ask questions, and kind of be open and vulnerable about where we are, what we're curious about, and what we may be struggling with.
Well, I think you hit a good point there. Is one of the important things to trust your kids is to know yourself and your own weaknesses.
Yes.
And so if you know, or you and your spouse talk about, hey, I've just noticed when you interact with Ellie, it hits this tension point when you approach it this way. Can we do it some other way? Just that support and recognizing your own fears and weaknesses is kind of, to me, that first step of building trust, because you have to trust yourself to hand over the fear of, whatever might happen.
Right. Well, I think, for example, like what you're talking about, that is as our girls were getting older, and I started thinking about, boys coming into the scenario, or love interests in general, looking at love interests coming into and people that are going to show interest in our children. I had to really be careful to not project my childhood, my personal experience on it. And you called me out on that. You kind of said, is this really a legit fear? And are you giving our children an openness to the positive that can happen, or are we just bracing for,
all these negative men? Right.
All men are jerks. Yeah. And I want to make sure not to do that. Boy, in our house, in a very female-dominated home,
it's easy to beat up the men.
It is. It can be really easy to stand on our feminist stance, and we can do all things. And I want to make sure that I, in every way possible, can support the men, just like my wonderful husband Nathan, the men that I am madly in love with, that have the qualities that I so desire for my children. I want somebody that respects them, that cherishes them, that challenges them, that pushes them toward their independence, that sees them as an equal partner in what they create together. And I've found that, and I believe that there are others that are out there. And so I don't want to just project my fears or
your relationship.
Right, or my relationship. I want to look at, can we walk through this together? That goes back to the first thing of just meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
Okay, that was really long for creating a safe space for your kids.
But that's an important foundation.
Creating a safe and open environment.
Because to me, that's the base
Right.
You have to have a level of trust or build a relationship today that is couched in trust. And for me, that is I constantly am monitoring that. So I think that's an important thing to spend a lot of time on, is honesty and trust on both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say on that too. I mean, showing your child that you trust them and helping them with age-appropriate things that show their trust. And I'm going to use Ellie as an example. We've used her name in here. So when Ellie was little and I say, go clean up your room, and it ended up being a fail. She would, throw everything in the closet, shut the door. I come in and I'm like, is it really clean? And then it's, I trusted you to do a good job. And here she'd thrown everything in the closet. Well, all of a sudden, it was this aha of, wait a second. Have I sat down with her and have we really talked about it? Have we worked through organizing together? Mm-hmm. Does she have the tools to do this at the age that she was? I remember she was really young.
They're watching all your bad things.
Right.
And they don't.
They're watching when you're rushing out the door and like, just shove it in the closet. Let's go. But they're not watching all the organization. And so what I did is but in order to first build that trust, I gave her the tools. I said, okay, here are the tools that can help you. This is how you can approach it. These are some things that would work. What do you see that can work? And I started to empower her with that. And what happened is she ended up being my master organizer. And if I need something organized, I go, hey, Ellie, can you do it? And so now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, hey, all right, Ellie, here, this is a game. Can you do this? And I speak to her style, and I asked her to do something, and she rocked it. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. And now it's, oh, man, Ellie, I can count on you for this. I see something that you're really good at, that you've worked on, and I trust you in this. I trust you to do a good job with it.
I can just see her beaming with that statement right now.
Right.
But those are the
or
things.
Or rolling her eyes, because I always ask her to organize.
Well, that's true.
I have to be careful on that.
But those are the things that you want. You want to crack open those opportunities to gush over your kids and say, man, you knocked it out of the park. Way to go. Because a lot of times we forget the importance of bringing up the positive. We usually talk about the negative things and the things they haven't done well, and bringing up the positive is an important one.
Right. All right. So the next one, number 2, is following through on your promises. This one we're going to go through quick, but it is so important. When you make a promise to your child, keep it. It shows them that you're reliable and trustworthy. If you say just 1 minute and 30 minutes later you've not looked up, that does not build trust in your relationship. And I am speaking as the guilty party. Or help them learn about time management. Exactly. If you say, hold on just a sec, follow through with it. I still have to be checked on this, because I'll say just a sec and I'll get lost in a bunny trail, and then a kid calls me out and I say, you know what, you're completely right.
Yep.
But sorry.
We've earned the trust to do that.
Right. And they've earned the trust, and I've given them the respect to say, you are right. I have not followed through with my end of the bargain. So be realistic about your commitments. Don't make promises you can't keep. Write down your commitments. That will help you to keep track of what's promised and what you really need when you need to do it by. Set reminders so that you remember. And if you have to break a promise, be honest with your child. Explain to them why you can't keep your promise and apologize. And we've done that a lot. Yes. I mean, I think we did a whole podcast episode on dealing with disappointment.
Yeah.
We don't hesitate to disappoint if we need to, if it doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah, we'll shift our schedule real quick if it doesn't fit into our desire map.
Right. If we start going and we say, yes, we're going to go to the movies and go get ice cream today, and then our life gets crazy, something changes, and all of a sudden it's not a good fit. It's, we've packed in too much today. I'm sorry. We've got too many moving parts, and it's going to be really hard for us to do it today. We aren't going to make it happen today, and here's my commitment for when we can. And this is when we will make it happen. We've done that. We've canceled plans many times. It doesn't mean that we always have to force something just because we said it once to our children. It means, going back to that first point again, being honest with our kids and being realistic of, hey, this is the reality. We were going to go to the park, but it's raining. What's another alternative? Or, hey, we were going to do this and this, but the reality is we just had something else come up that is demanding my attention. I'm too distracted to be able to do this right now. Can we make a rain check? There's all kinds of ways we can evaluate it, be honest with our children and not betray their trust, where it's you said, and I can't trust you to follow through. If they can't trust you to follow through, why should you be trusting them to follow through?
Exactly.
Respect goes both ways, and I think trust and respect go hand in hand.
And communicating what's going on a level that they can understand just helps them feel involved, and not just there's this big black hole of yes or no. Right? There's reasons behind everything. And some parents just say, hey, it's nothing you need to worry about. We just can't do it today.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to write their own story on what that
Right.
nothing there is that you can do about it. And so, or they're going to get mad at you because they're going to feel like you're out of control in your life. And where's the control in their life?
I think that we get a lot of times we get feedback about our children being very mature for their age. And I don't think that it's something where it's just we've got these anomaly children that are just so unique. I think so much of it has to do with our conversations with our kids. And they have been exposed to adult things in a way that they can handle because they don't have to carry it. But they're curious. Well, what do you mean you're distracted because there's a bunch of stuff going on in the news right now? Well, this is the reality, and we're just trying to discern it, and I'm trying not to get sucked into it. And then, well, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Well, who is this? And then we go down a bunny trail of learning together and sharing, multiple viewpoints and learning the history of something. And, those are valuable conversations. And that right there is delightful learning. I mean, that's the essence of our unschooling. Mm-hmm. That's why we can throw the curriculum out the window, and that yet we have children that are that we hear people say, it's like talking to a 30-year-old.
Right.
Because we are just sharing and discussing life with them. So the third one is just being a role model, being honest with your child, like we said before, keeping your promises, like we said before, being the model of respect. If you want it, if you are going to demand it of others, you better be dishing it out full force. Give it. And model it first. And
to me, this falls into almost your family vision. Mm-hmm. That's the framework for your position as a role model. Because if you're telling your kids that honesty is important and telling the truth is important and being transparent is important, but you're sneaking around a company to manipulate their system, or you're doing these things to, they didn't see or they didn't come to get the check, so we're just going to leave. If they see you behaving in that way, that gives them permission to behave in that way.
Oh, my goodness. There is nothing that can be more accountable for keeping your nose clean than the child that's going to blab it all.
Yeah, that's right.
And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, do I want to have to be nervous about whether my child is going to bust the secret of where I'm being deceptive? No, just keep our nose clean to begin with.
Yep.
We talk a lot about that we do not have conversations. Now, we may have conversations that may be something where we're explaining to our children and somebody else is not ready to hear the information. But we're not having conversations where we would be scared if there was a camera in the room. Or
well, we've there was a time when Ellie was 3 or 4, and we did a study where she wore a recorder for a week. It was recording
her vocabulary. It was a language study on how much they talked, and wow,
and
Ellie was quite the talker.
She was a talker, but it was also a study in honesty and how we behave when we're being watched. For me, because I caught myself behaving differently because I knew I was being recorded, and it made me ask, well, if I would not do it then, why would I? Right,
exactly.
And so that was just a good wake up call for us. That was just and from then on it was like, well, that's it.
If you were going to be recorded,
walk or you don't.
Yeah, I mean, in a world where everything can be traced and so much is, you're held accountable for, and you should be held accountable for. I mean, think about that. If your life were recorded, would you be able to stand by that with integrity, to admit your faults and to say, yes, I did that. I messed up. I'm not saying we live perfect, but, to be willing to admit your faults and show your growth and speak in a way that isn't going to make you duck your head in shame if somebody catches you.
If you're having that gut check right now, nothing is lost. I mean, you can start today adjusting that behavior, and that will have a tangible impact in your family when they start to see the change in you over a 6-month period of time. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but over a 6-month, year-long period of time, and they see the shift in your attitude and approach, I guarantee you'll see something different.
Mm-hmm. So our challenge to you this week is simply to open the door for more trust-building opportunity with your family. First thing for that is just spending time together. Make sure that you have those down times that could involve those deeper conversations. And oftentimes side by side or working on a project, going for a walk, riding in the car, working on a project, cleaning dishes, all of these things where we're kind of doing an activity or not facing each other, oftentimes can be a really great time for open and vulnerable conversations, especially as our children grow and they get more complex.
To me, that's the best thing that you can possibly do. I mean, I remember I was talking to Ellie about trust this week, and she was saying...
Obviously, we're bringing Ellie up a lot. She's the one that actually said this is the topic for the podcast, so she picked this podcast topic.
That's true. But we were talking about how she had a misconception on how to earn trust. She thought that if she was good and behaved for one day, that justified her whole life.
She's good then.
And huh?
She was good then.
Yeah, she was. And so I thought you said she's Nathan.
Oh, no. Not calling you out, baby.
Whoa. But she said, I realized that, trust is earned every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And you helped me see that by pointing out, Ellie, that's how you earn trust. But the only way I could have those opportunities is by putting her in the position to fail and either lose trust or gain trust. And so we would go into situations where we would go to a store if we asked her not to touch something, or we'd go into, I would say, hey, we're going to go on a walk and I need you to hold Harley in this way. Can you try to do that? Once, I feel like it's out of control, I'm going to take it back over if that's okay. And so we just...
But you hear the preface, and that's the key here. It's not... I know that, I don't like to feel tested where somebody is just waiting for me to fail. We don't want to do that to our kids either. So we don't just go, okay, we're going to go into this shop, and we walk into the shop. No, especially with our young children. It was, okay, line up. Let's listen. Okay, do you guys want to go in this store? Does it look like fun stuff? Yes. Okay. What do you think the person is going to feel like if you're going and grabbing everything?
Or how do you feel when another small kid comes into your room and grabs all your stuff?
Right. We give them some moments. We frame it where they can empathize, where they can place themselves in somebody else's shoes. Then we set the expectation. This is what we want to do. We're gonna make it a game. Can you keep your hands in your pockets? And if you can't, that's okay. You're human. You're impulsive. You can't handle it. That's fine. But at that point, we're going to remove you out of respect for the store. So doing some things like that gives them some little opportunities to kind of play with that trust and play with their own ability and skill set and maturity level at the time, and do it in a way that still creates a safe cushion, because we want to have that safe environment for them to try and to fail and to try again.
And that means you got to have a forgiving heart. You have to have a heart that's ready to accept and forgive their transgressions, because they're going to make mistakes. And you don't need to respond and, I told you so, or that should, I knew that was going to happen, which I'm really bad about.
That does not help at all.
And so, recognizing that and just saying, okay, here's where I want to give you this, or when they come and ask me, can I do this? I'll be honest, this is what I'm frightened of, but I trust you. I want you to know where my fear is, so you can know where my anxiety is coming from. Like when they wanted to dive down in this 20-foot pit with a weight attached to their belt, and I didn't know.
Okay, quick clarification. We are in the Florida Keys. We're volunteering in the Florida Keys. We have snorkeling, of course, all around us, and our children love to free dive. And our kids, being 11, almost 14 and 16, are very strong swimmers, can hold their breath for a long time, and wanted to use diving weights. And that is extremely terrifying as a parent, to have an 11-year-old sink to the bottom of 20 feet.
Put on an adult diving belt.
Yeah.
That's 5 pounds. That's 10% of their weight, and then have them swim back up. But it's that process of, and I taught Juliet, who I was most concerned about but wanted to do it the most. I went down to the bottom with her. She sat down there, and then I showed her the risk that I was worried about is when you have to come back up. Getting down is the easy part, but getting back 20 feet is the struggle. And do you have the oxygen and the time and the energy to get there? I wanted her to learn that, and so I went down there with her. I counted to 7 or 8, and then I tapped her on her shoulder. I said, let's go up. And I shot up because I didn't have any weights on her. She had to struggle and fight, and I was right there with her so I could reach and grab her if I wanted to, but I wanted her to see that she doesn't just pop up. There's an impact to this weight that you're putting on yourself. And that builds, now I trust her to know what that feels like. I trust her to not get in trouble.
She's using a little bit more discernment. She realized afterward.
She saw, ooh, that is scary.
Yeah.
I got a little scared. I appreciate you showing me that. But she and I trust each other. She knows I won't put her in a position of danger. And I trust that she'll stay alive if she wants to push that envelope.
Right.
And we just kind of go back and forth.
And that's a beautiful relationship, and that's what we want to foster with our kids. It's not throwing them to the wolves. It's not hovering and micromanaging. It's a dance. It is a dance back and forth and try again, and each of you stretching a little bit in your willingness to try to work together.
But it's a dance that's worth showing up to every single day.
For sure. Because these are beautiful children we are raising. They are the future leaders and the ones that are going to impact our world moving forward. And we want them to trust themselves enough to be able to do it in a way where
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
Namaste.
2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Namaste in your heart. Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.